Is Forza Motorsport worth it in 2026? And I mean that literally. Right now, if you sit down, load up the game, and actually race it, is it worth your time? Is the racing good enough to keep coming back to? Does the handling still hold up once the novelty wears off? Does the online side actually work the way it should? And when things go wrong, do the problems outweigh the fun? Or does the fun still win? I'm going to talk about how this game feels when you actually play it in 2026, what it does well, where it still falls apart, and who this game generally makes sense for now. Because there is a version of Forza Motorsport that is actually quite enjoyable. The real question is whether that version shows up often enough to justify sticking with it. Thing is, Forza Motorsport in 2026 sits in a strange place. It's not a new game, it's not a dead game either. The game itself has just settled. The big swings are over, the dramatic changes are done. What you see now is what the game is. That makes it the fairest time to judge it. Because there's no excuses left, the game isn't early access, there isn't a next patch, and there's no, it will get there eventually, like I used to say. This is the finished product. And what makes it interesting is that the foundations of the game are actually quite strong, but everything built on top of that is so uneven. The contradictions is the entire experience. The reason this conversation keeps coming back is simple. Forza Motorsport is fun right up until it isn't. You may have nights where races feel engaging, competitive and satisfying. You jump from lobby to lobby, one more race turns into an hour without you even noticing. And then you have sessions where everything goes wrong. Bad penalties, chaotic drivers, rammers, and the system is just working this against you. And you just end up walking away, fed up, drained, and done for the night. The most important thing is both of those experiences are real, and both are very common. So the question isn't, is Forza Motorsport good or bad? The question is, how often does it give you the version that feels worth your time? For me, the first moment where Forza Motorsport really clicked wasn't a feature or an update. It was the first win. It was in the MG, and I remember it very clearly because of how it felt and not what happened. And as soon as I realized I was actually leading, everything slowed down. Your mind changes gear. You become cautious because you can't actually afford to slow down, because if you back off too much, that car behind you is going to catch up. Every corner feels heavier, every braking zone matters more. You're constantly thinking, don't overdrive, don't miss that apex, and don't make a stupid mistake. But at the same time, you can't just defend the latter half of the race, you've got to get away. The balance itself is so stressful, but in the best possible way. And that's where Forza Motorsport really shines and is at its best. Because the pressure is self-inflicted, you know? The game isn't forcing me to have drama or forcing you to have drama. You're creating it by caring because of the outcome. When I crossed that finish line, it wasn't relief, it was satisfaction. And that feeling is the reason people keep coming back. At its core, Forza Motorsport feels good to drive. It's not perfect, not revolutionary, but good. And importantly, consistent enough that you can actually build confidence over time. Handling varies properly by car class. Front-wheel drives can understeer. Rear-wheel drives would like to over-rotate at times. You actually feel the weight transfer. The longer you drive on a track, the more you get grip because the track rubbers in. But at the same time of that, you lose grip because your tires are wearing. This balance really works. It's not hardcore sim behavior, but it is believable. And for a SimK, that matters more than realism. There are a few still weird moments. Curbs on a track can feel like you've just hit ice. Kyle Army's a perfect example of that. While Mugello's on the other side of things, you hit a curb wrong at Mugello and it will just rip you clean off the track. Kind of like glue. The overall physics have stayed consistent since launch, and honestly, that's because they're pretty good. Not flawless, but solid. This is where Forza Motorsport becomes a very different game depending on how you play it. Tuning is not optional here. And that's both of the game's biggest strengths and the biggest problems. The base setups are just wrong. Road cars sit about 40 to 45 psi, which is absolutely absurd. And a lot of cars, they handle terribly in stock settings, so you're pretty much forced to tune. At first, it is frustrating. You're not tuning to optimize, you're tuning to fix things that shouldn't have been broken in the first place. But once you get past that, tuning becomes more of a second skill. A perfect example of this is aero. Most of the cars sit around 50-50 aero in base stock settings. The moment you remove the rear aero and apply maximum front aero, the handling characteristics are very different and you become a lot more competitive. Also, your car's a lot faster. And then you start tuning some more. Lap times start to drop. You become a little bit more consistent. You start to trust the car. You commit earlier on the throttle, you brake later with confidence, and that consistency starts to build pace naturally. That's where tuning really separates drivers online. It's not just raw speed and aggression, it's understanding the characteristics of the car and the tune, and having own self-confidence of one's own ability. When Forza Motorsport is working perfectly, the mental side of the racing is where it really shines. Before the race starts, there's anticipation, not excitement, but focus. On the grid, everything narrows. You're not thinking about menus, systems, you're thinking about that first corner. Mid-race, especially in longer events, rhythm starts to take over. You're watching your lap times, watching gaps, thinking about when to push and when to back off. You're battling somebody closely, the tension is constant. You're aware where they are, you're listening, looking, watching the radar, listening to what the information has been given to you. You're thinking 2 corners ahead. What if they do this? What if I do that? Every input feels deliberate, and when the checkered flag falls, that's either relief or frustration. But it's rarely indifference. The emotional loop is where this game really works. When the system works in your favor, Forza Motorsport is, I would say, dangerous, because one or more race turns into an hour so easily. Each track feels exciting for different reasons. Each car behaves slightly different. You hop on from lobby to lobby just saying, I'll just have one more race. And it's suddenly massively late into the evening. But some races are so bad you just have to walk away. You get rammers, chaotic drivers, people with zero spatial awareness, and then the penalty system on top of that. Some rhyme or reason they think it's your fault and you get a penalty. That really just adds insult to injury. And that's when you walk away. It breaks you. That's it for the night. I've got to go. And this is where the frustration kind of creeps back in within the game. Replays are still a mess. Any race over 20 minutes, you got a 50-50 chance of it saving. Anything longer than that, it just doesn't save at all. Guess what though? You can only save 10 replays. 10 replays in 2026. That is absurd. The only reason for that is we can presume it's saved on the cloud because it's not saved locally. This next one will make you laugh. You can have more cars than you are actually able to tune in this game, and that is ridiculous. PC, stuttering still exists, especially in qualifying sessions. As you join a qualifying session, if someone else joins, you get a stutter. Whilst joining a race, before a race starts in intermission, there is a lot of stuttering. And from a lot of testing, it does seem to be linked to liveries. So the more complex the livery, the bigger the stutter. While it used to cost upwards of a second, now it costs about a tenth. But that tenth is what really matters sometimes in some positions. A tenth is a P1 or it could be a P2 or 3. And that is what really breaks the immersion. This is the reason why I don't qualify for the race anymore, because of that issue. Very few races are qualified, but when you give it you all and then something unexpected happens, like a stutter, it just ruins it. It ruins it. While these aren't deal breakers every time, they do chip away at you. Career mode is where Forza Motorsport completely drops the ball. And not because it's broken, because it's absolutely boring. There is no narrative, no emotional hook, and no sense of journey. It's a checklist. Start wherever you want in the race, get to first place, AI fall asleep, you win. Rinse and repeat. I mean, older games like Tucker Race Driver at least try to give a story. I mean, it was cheesy, but it made races feel like events. Here, career mode feels more of an obligation. something you do to unlock things, not because it's engaging, but I might get a car at the end of it. I don't know. You know, that's the only thing you really do win. And that's probably why most people end up playing in multiplayer instead, because you can also unlock those cars there. Now, when people say Forza Motorsport is dead, they're usually reacting to the lack of updates. And while yes, it is disappointing that the game is in support only mode, but because there's no update doesn't automatically mean the game is worthless. There's a lot of content here, plenty of tracks, plenty of cars, active online lobbies. GTs, TCRs are always almost fully populated. The very few races that we've jumped in that have 5 or 6 people in, and I think that's more of a, we've opened a new server because we have an influx of people, and that's, you know, you're the leftovers, you're shoved in that pile. The real issue isn't really content, and I think it's more trust. Marketing promised more than they actually delivered. Built from the ground up became a slogan rather than a truth. It was it's everywhere. If you haven't heard of it, where have you been? That built from the ground up has been, it must be one of their worst sentences ever. They must be biting them ever so hard. I mean, all the old issues that they've dropped in have carried over. Take a few updates, for example, right? They say, oh, here's a new update. Here's a new car. The Daytona was a perfect example of an update that they released, and it had all the errors in Daytona that it had in Forza Motorsport 7. You know, some other tracks were exactly the same, where they released an update and it had the same faults as the previous game. So that's not new content, that's upscaled, recycled content, in my own opinion. While some issues were fixed, a lot were not. And that in itself damages the confidence. I mean, multiplayer is where Forza Motorsport really does earn its place. The variety is massive. Different race lengths, different classes, weekly special events. You're choosing races, not waiting for them. Matchmaking isn't perfect. Everyone kind of gets lumped together. I mean, yes, you do get a safety rating system, skill-based system. You're just all chucked into a same lobby anyway, you know. So it's irrelevant. I mean, if you're down in the D safety rating, you've got to put some work in to get that low, you know. It does take effort. I'd say the biggest problem with online racing is the skill gap. Everybody's all lumped together, and P1 could be a minute and a half ahead of P24. And that kind of takes away the competition, because there's very few races that P1 has a battle with somebody that's at the same level as they are or could produce the same lap time. It's not all that common. I would say that's where the competition side of things does fall off. Saying that though, most of the races really, besides a few here and there, are pretty clean. But heading back to what I said a minute ago, there is that one race where there's 2 of you, or it could be 3 or 4. You're all within a tenth of each other, all racing, battling, defending, everything you've got, and it's all down to that 1/10, and that is clean, hard, respectful racing. And those are the races that are unforgivable, and it makes Forza Motorsport absolutely magical. So is Forza Motorsport worth it in 2026? Yeah, with some conditions. It's worth it if you enjoy the act of racing itself, if you enjoy learning cars, and if you enjoy tuning, if you enjoy competitive online racing. But it's not worth it if you want a strong single player career mode, if you want polish everywhere, and if you want systems that never get in the way. I'd be generally upset though if this game was to disappear tomorrow. It is a brilliant game, because when it works, it offers something absolutely special. It's fun, tense, and rewarding, and that for me, that's enough.